Today we're getting an exclusive look at how Andersen 100 series are made, everything from the Fibrex material to the finished product.
We're talking everything, the design, the technology, the insane precision that goes into every single window.
This is where innovation meets durability, made from a material that's 2 times as strong as vinyl and built to withstand the toughest conditions.
And we're about to see the entire process start to finish, so let's get inside and check it out.
So behind us is almost 600,000 square feet of manufacturing. This is all for the Andersen 100 series, and everything starts with Fibrex. What is Fibrex? It is essentially all of this wood fiber from the wood window manufacturing that they came up with this proprietary mix of wood fiber and polymer and developed what is now Fibrex.
So you have the sawdust, there's a sustainability there. This is recycled Fibrex material, so there's sustainability there. And then these are the pellets that are actually going into the hopper that's going to begin that extrusion process.
Yeah, and behind you right there is actually what that hopper looks like with an example screw. And they're essentially forcing this through, and that screw is heated up to an extreme temperature, melting it down, and then essentially pushing it through here, which is a series of dies to get that profile.
We're in the southwestern portion of the United States, so there's extreme temperature fluctuations. It can get up to 120 degrees here during the summertime. So this Fibrex material is super durable and super stable.
It can actually sustain temperatures up to 150 degrees. The coating, this is actually 12 times thicker than, say, a painted vinyl would be. It doesn't fade, doesn't have all those typical issues a coating would have.
Yeah, so the other option is vinyl, right? And I believe this product is 2 times stronger as well.
Yeah, it's much more rigid. And behind us here, you can see on the wall, these are some of the profiles that they offer. But this is only a small portion of what they offer.
In this market, right, with these temperatures out in the desert, you're reaching 120 degrees, so this is gonna be your best bet, most durable product, and also it's sustainable. So right now they're bringing in anywhere from 13 to 16 foot lengths, stockpiling them, getting ready for the fabrication end of things.
Beside us, you can see a lot of these extrusions are piled up. Everything is tagged. You even see some of the early view of glass coming in. All of this stuff is categorized and then stored in what we'll call a massive vending machine that has a ton of pockets in it, that all of that material gets stored in a way that is not only easily accessible, but safely accessible. And that's something that Andersen really preaches in terms of their process here. Safety is number one. So as material is stored, it comes down to this lower level, and this is where that material is essentially handled, and it's all done with this overhead, essentially gantry. You can actually see it behind us here. But this gantry here moves on a chain and a pulley system to allow that material to be slid out onto this, and then the worker standing at that machine can feed this right onto the machine. From this piece of material coming off that line, this is because it's for an order.
Yeah.
So everything in here is essentially tied back to a QR code that is tied back to a customer order, and then from this point forward, tracked based on that QR code.
Their entire process and system, it has backups and it has checks to ensure that everything's getting done the way that it's supposed to.
You can see actually the machine's grabbing that piece and bringing it in the saw, and then there's multiple steps here. What's directly in front of us here, there's a drill in there that is boring out for future hardware. All of that is based on the spec of what this window is. And then as you work your way down here, Tyler said these are 2 small saw blades.
Massive saw blades.
And this is where you're starting to see these pieces get cut. Not only the length, but the miters.
And they're basically minimizing the waste where those 2 miter cuts are coming in.
That actuator that pushes it against the fence, it pushes it against the fence, the one on top drops down and holds it, but it backs up and it pushes it again.
Yeah.
And it's almost replicating what a human would do.
Yep.
It's like you take it and you're making sure that it's against that fence. There's 3 saw blades.
Yeah.
I didn't notice the back one, but they got to be 30 inches in diameter, just sitting there ready to work.
It's also impressive, like the sequencing of them, that there's no downtime.
Passes through here.
So this is essentially a router bit, which is routing out some of the internals of these extrusions. And it's either going to be for hardware, it's going to get rid of the flange on some of the units, or any sort of mechanical fasteners that are going to join these 2 pieces together. So you can see that it's removing specific parts of these components for the next step down the process.
And then what you're seeing here is a completed extrusion piece. This is for a window frame, not a sash. That piece of material comes out and it comes over, and then they're gonna grab this off the manufacturing line, and then it's gonna go into one of these racks. And then you can see here, just general waste. This is some of the material that gets, likely recycled, whether it's being recut or it's being ground up for future use. Tyler, we were talking about the racks off camera, but it's impressive how the simple rack, when they're putting this material in, the way that they're manufactured, and it makes their job easier. But when they're putting that material in, that swings up and out of the way, and they know that this is, is not going to fall out.
Yeah, you could see that they even have, these are probably the next iteration of carts for where you have the mitered end pieces, because you'll see how the flange and the cut actually drops into these and secures everything. They're always refining their process.
Everyone knows what a flanged window looks like. It's the typical nailing flange, this section here, but they also offer it with no flange. And that no flange option is just essentially the same thing with that flange cut off.
So it's the same extrusion, and then they're removing the flange.
But they have two other options, which are primarily for stucco.
Yeah, so this is one of the stucco flanges, and you can see it's just another extrusion option where this is gonna go onto the facade of the stucco, and it'll cover actually on that stucco. So there's no traditional nailing flange here.
Yeah, this is their flush fin detail, and then they also have a stucco key, which essentially allows that stucco to be tied into the window. You start to see a lot of the carts are stacked with parts. All of this stuff is being bundled together per job.
And it's all done through those QR codes to make sure that every component is put where it needs to be, and ensuring that there's no mistakes.
Let's follow these pieces and figure out where they're being assembled. We are in the single hung frame assembly section. The pieces come here and they're actually being, they're starting on these benches, which is back to kind of a human touch, right?
Yeah, so they're putting all of the parts in there that are going to retain and house the sash, if it's a fixed sash. Basically anything that needs to get put on this unit prior to them doing the actual corner welds.
The blue tape here, actually, what this is actually representing is the weep holes. So this lets someone know that not only are there weep holes, and they're protected for the actual welding and assembly of it. We can't stand beyond this yellow line, but this is the corner welding. So Tyler, walk us through what this does.
All of these parts are made a tiny bit long, because this corner welding machine, it's gonna heat up and it's gonna go onto those mitered corners until it softens that material enough. The actual heating element will be removed, and then they'll push those two pieces together. And you'll see that when that happens, there's actually a little bit of curling. So there's some waste material that's been accounted for. That's gonna create a waterproof structural weld between the Fibrex material.
We'll step back, let this frame go in, but this is what it looks like before it goes in. That doesn't look that great, but when it goes through the saw, that's, Tyler,
yeah, so
you have the finished product.
Here's the finished product where they're planing this off and then removing all of this additional material on the inside. So it's structural and waterproof at that point.
And that's right off a saw. No need to add any finish.
Even the flange is welded together,
which is nice. So frames are assembled. Sashes are also being assembled here on the other side. And now it's a matter of putting them together. Before they go together, we'll take a look at the sashes.
Yeah, let's head over that way. The big difference between the sash assembly and the frame assembly is the joinery technique. So the sash is actually going to use a key. So they use that to inject the hot melt adhesive into the actual window assembly, and that's what locks that together and waterproofs it.
And one of the things they said, this key is designed specifically for each sash type, but it's also really specific to the way the glue flows.
Yep.
They're measuring every aspect of the glue to make sure that glue does not fail. They're assembling this within the sash components, but then they're injecting that hot melt glue, which I believe right here is, I think I can touch it, right?
Yeah, so here's a hot melt that they're using to put into the hopper, right? You're putting this window together and you're injecting hot melt and adhesive inside of it. How do you know that you have sufficient adhesive, sufficient flow? They basically measure it. Every so often they're gonna go and they're gonna use this device that they created to inject the hot melt in through this port, this orifice, and then once this cures, they're gonna actually go and take this and measure it according to how many grams it weighs, and there's a certain spec and a tolerance as far as how much adhesive is going in, and they ensure that it's sufficient adhesive to bond that together. So you can see right here, this is where the actual orifice from that keyway is. So it's set inside of that frame, and that's where they're injecting the hot melt, which is filling up this entire joint and bonding this side of the unit to this side of the unit.
I think it's worth noting that this one in particular is actually a casement style window.
Yep.
The frames we're looking at are a single hung unit. But just for the purpose of explanation, you know, this one showed the entire assembly. All of these efficient processes, what happens if the machine pauses? Say this machine has an issue and they have to stop work. You don't want the entire facility to shut down waiting for one machine.
Yeah, everything that comes after it, right?
Right, so that right there is what is essentially a buffer rack. So if this machine is doing well, but on the other side, the manufacturing has an issue, this rack essentially just fills up with material ready for the other side to open back up. Same thing, vice versa. If they're cruising, they have a whole rack of material, and this thing pauses, they know that they have a backlog, which you're always allowing kind of the next phase to continue.
One thing I wanted to show here, in all of these bays where they have the parts, right, there's screws, there's clips, keepers, there's colored lights. When the associate goes to fabricate these units and put them together, and they scan that QR code, these will light up with which parts they have to use to assemble that window. Again, taking the thought out of it and really creating efficiency and no mistakes where, hey, I need this screw size because this light is illuminated. I need this keeper because this light's illuminated. So they're taking all of the thinking out of that and creating a really seamless process for their employees.
Not only that, but like the same thing when they're filling this stuff, everything is coded.
Yeah.
It's a very diverse workforce here. They have 100-something employees to date that have went through learning English as a second language, which is something that they offer on work time, which is incredible. They make a real push to make sure that they're not reliant on someone being able to understand the English language, and they're doing it by visual components like the lights.
I mean, even from a fatigue perspective, right?
Not just physically fatiguing, but mentally fatiguing.
Oh yeah.
That's one of the downsides of manufacturing is like, you're doing the same thing, like you run the risk of kind of being blinded by the decision.
Yeah, you put the wrong size fastener or screw in, and it blows through the unit, you got to go back to the start.
All the way to the back to the beginning. So let's go to the glass.
So all of the glass is pre-cut and assembled that it needs to fit precisely into that unit.
So when they're shipping the glass, the order in which that glass is shipped and stacked on a rack is the same order in which they're building the frames. When you're framing a home, you try to take delivery for the material in order that you're going to use it.
That frame is ready to accept the glass. The sealant's on there, they're dropping the glass into it. That's going to create that bond for the glass to the Fibrex material, and then they're going to put those sash covers in so that you don't see that exposed edge of the glazing with the sealant on there. How quickly that makes the window go from looking like an unfinished unit to a finished unit very quickly with just one little plastic transition piece.
It's started by hand, and then they have an assist that's essentially a roller that makes sure that that thing gets completely installed. So that makes its way all the way down to the end. And
the last part that we'll see down here is the employee putting the actual hardware on the sashes. So we might be able to sneak in here. This next unit is coming down the line. There's a green light illuminated, and that means that that's the bin she's going to grab from to install that hardware.
she's going to put the lock hardware on the top there.
Even the way that this table's set up, right, it's at a nice working height for her. Everything has been thought out, planned for, and accounted for. Finished putting that window together, she's going to scan that UPC label, and it's off down the line.
So sashes go essentially around this like carousel, and then they come out this other end. You know, they were feeding on one end, coming out here, and this is where the frame and the sashes meet. Sashes are going to come out here, frames are coming out on that end there, and a lot of that hardware that we were talking about, you know, before the frame was constructed, is allowing that upper sash on the 100 series, they're fixed units. So that upper sash goes in, it clips in, and then it is not operable. But this is where they're also installing all of the balance tubes for the lower sash to be installed. It's funny to watch these guys assemble it because they put this together so quickly, and you think about when you remove a sash in a window and how
long it takes.
How long it takes. One guy's putting the upper sash in, you know, he's bringing this stuff out. When he's dropping that second sash in, he's making sure it's complete, locks that sash, turns around, hits an OK on the computer, passes it on to the next person. let's flip to the other side, because as they pass it on to the next person, it actually flips to the outside. So what it looks like is happening is that that window is getting the stickers that are required. This is where you're getting all of those, you know, protection tabs
Sash
installed,
locks.
sash locks, really prepping this thing for shipping.
Yeah, so the next thing at this point, this is a fully assembled unit. The sashes are locked in and protected for distribution. All the appropriate tags are put on, everything's cleaned, and then it's gonna make its way down into where it's gonna get styrofoam on the corners and then packaged up into an Andersen box. They're literally going and wiping down the frame of every window as well to make sure that prior to this going in a box, there's nothing on there, which I think is impressive. It's just one last detail where they're hand wiping that window down, which is...
As you're saying that, I'm also realizing, like, some of these windows are really tall, and they've even installed a step.
Yeah.
So they know that that sticker is going to be up high, and rather than rely on having a step stool, or they're modifying the equipment to make sure that this is something that works for everyone.
So here the windows
Come in,
fully
they drop
assembled
down.
units are working their way down the line. They're going from vertical into horizontal, and then we are getting ready to be packaged for shipment.
So this is laid down on the outside. Again, you see how the sash is open, all the locks are in place. You know, that really protects the window, you know, the permanent window lock from being damaged in shipping. So they leave, that's a big reason why they leave it unlocked. And then it works its way down, and this is where you're the beginning of all of your packaging material.
It's like an air hockey table. So they have a fan blowing up from underneath that because, right, it's a finished window now. They just cleaned it. It's going to be packaged in box. They don't want to slide this window and scratch it, so they've essentially created an air hockey table that's just going to float that window and prevent it from being damaged as they move it down towards shipping.
Because you know unpackaging it is far more difficult.
And that cardboard's coming pre-bent, pre-cut, so they're putting the window on that it's cut perfectly to size. They put the styrofoam in the corners to protect that. So everything is pre-bent, pre-packaged, staple it off. They make that look very easy. Every time I go to UPS, I wish it was this easy.
That window comes out, it's stood up, and then it's going to be heading out, and this is where they start getting all the packaging stickers of what that window is, and it looks like it's going to go right over to here, and then this is where that job is going to get all put together. And if this is a strict 100 series project, this is where everything goes together and staged for delivery. And if it was a project that pulls from other Andersen lines, such as an E series or something like that, she's going to collect all of that into one area, because I don't want shipments coming from different factories. You know, a client, we would prefer all of our Andersen windows to come at one time.
Yeah.
So they're really intentional to make sure that they understand what this order is holistically throughout the company, and they put it together to be packaged and shipped. So if that wasn't being packaged up as a single unit ready to go out, it's heading over to the other end of the factory, which is where they're doing all of the factory mulling. Now they have Easy Connect, which is an in-field, actually in window opening connection detail that they offer, but most will opt for the factory mulling. You can see here, like, this is a fixed single hung unit, and it's being mulled against a picture unit on the left here. This is in progress. That I think they actually stepped on at lunch, but these units will be connected, and then you get that factory mull look.
The packaging process is a little bit different. They showed us on the bigger units as well. Cardboard box isn't going to support that unit, so they're either wrapping it 2x4s or 1x and then shrink wrapping that to maintain the integrity of that unit during shipping.
As we're looking at all of this, this is a great overview of the Goodyear facility for their Andersen 100 series windows, which have been around for years, but it really shows how they look at sustainability, workplace safety, and efficiency, which really gives Andersen the opportunity to offer a more budget-friendly window. And I think that understanding what goes into manufacturing these, and not only that, but the testing and the consistent improvement, really embodies what they're all about from a quality perspective.
It's a testament to the company. It's a testament to the way that they treat their employees, for the really what they're trying to create as a culture with Andersen Window. And it's really neat to be a part of that and witness that evolution from product through facility and through just the people of Andersen Windows.
Yeah, so on behalf of Modern Craftsman, We appreciate Andersen for inviting us to tour this facility and hope you guys enjoyed it.